Alexa, what do
Hey
you do?
Google, play my love.
Hey Google,
playlist.
play my fun
Alexa,
Okay,
playing now.
Time is 3:27.
Alexa, stop.
Hey Google,
Alexa,
call Alex.
add vacuum
Alexa,
paper
how
to the
tall
shopping
is Mount
list.
Everest?
Artificial intelligence. It's all around us, in our phones and tablets, online on servers and databases, and even in our cars. But what is artificial intelligence? How does it work? And what implications does it have? Before I get started, I wanted to mention that there's an excellent video by Crash Course that goes over the same kind of things I'll be touching on today. The video is titled Artificial Intelligence and Personhood, and if you want to find out more about artificial intelligence, I would suggest checking it out. Let's start with a definition. What is artificial intelligence? According to Merriam-Webster, artificial intelligence is a branch of computer science dealing with the simulation of intelligent computers, or the capability of a machine to imitate intelligent human behavior. The Oxford Living Dictionary defines AI as the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. This is a lot of description with a few things in common. One of the words that made it into all three of these definitions is intelligence, which is understandable as it's half of the phrase of artificial intelligence. The definition of intelligence is a little more intense. Merriam-Webster says that intelligence is defined as the ability to learn or understand or to deal with new or trying situations, or the ability to apply knowledge to manipulate one's environment or think abstractly as measured by objective criteria, such as tests. Most AI as we understand it today, like Siri and Alexa, fail the first part. They understand and deal with situations they are prepared for, but anything they aren't programmed for will confuse them. Asking a Google Home to vacuum the carpet or wash the dishes will prompt it to respond with a
"Sorry, I can't help with that yet."
The second part is a bit more debatable though. Most digital assistants can manipulate their environment. For instance, I can tell Google to turn on the lights on my tree that has a smart plug attached, and with the right command, "Hey Google, turn on the Christmas tree," it'll change its environment. Of course, this logic is sketchy as I'm the one who gave it the ability to manipulate certain aspects of its surroundings, but it is changing the environment nonetheless. When it comes to measuring the AI's ability to think abstractly, the first test that comes to mind is the famous Turing test. Invented by English computer scientist Alan Turing, the Turing test attempts to determine if a machine can think by how well it performs in the imitation game. To explain the Turing test, I'm going to cut to a clip of CNET's What is the Turing Test, which I think does a very good job of explaining what the test is and why it's so important.
Imagine a game with 3 players. One player, the interrogator, is isolated from the other 2 players, one of whom is human and one of whom is a computer. The interrogator's job is to try and figure out which is the human and which is the computer by asking questions of both. To make things harder, the computer is trying to make the interrogator guess wrongly. In other words, it's trying to be as indistinguishable from a human as possible. If, more often than not, the interrogator is unable to determine computer from human, then hey, maybe we're dealing with a thinking computer.
Now, Alan Turing wasn't just some random computer scientist. Turing was responsible for creating a machine to decode messages encrypted in the Nazis' Enigma machine during World War II, as well as countless other innovations and discoveries. However, as smart and as talented as Alan Turing was, there is now some questions regarding the validity of the Turing test. Given that the Turing test was thought of in the 1950s, when computers were in their infancy, a lot has changed since when the test was first developed. Many computer scientists now think that there are 2 different types of intelligence, both human intelligence and artificial intelligence. Both have their strengths and both have their weaknesses. The Turing test is attempting to measure human intelligence in place of artificial intelligence, or machine intelligence. For instance, although a human may be very good at holding a conversation, a machine can calculate an answer to a mathematical equation much faster than any human could. However, just because there are 2 different types of intelligence does not mean that humans will quit trying to make a machine that can imitate human intelligence. For the sake of this philosophical take on artificial intelligence, we'll be staying within the boundaries of human intelligence as described in machines. Now, as I mentioned before, many of our everyday digital assistants are not very good at mimicking intelligence as described in the definitions by Merriam-Webster. These digital assistants are great at demonstrating machine intelligence, but not so great when it comes to thinking abstractly. So then, has there been any development in machines trying to imitate human intelligence? Not surprisingly, the answer is yes. And actually, some of it can be seen within the digital assistants you have on your phone or in your house. One example of this is Google's DeepMind AI project, which powers the text-to-speech engine in its Google Assistant by using a convolutional neural network. In simpler terms, whenever the Google Assistant says anything, it is using a true artificial intelligence that is responding to a new and trying situation. The speech engine uses something called a neural network, which is based off the way a brain works. Old text-to-speech programs used recordings of words or letter sounds, which sometimes worked and sometimes, well... You can see we've come a long way from that kind of speech synthesis. The same kind of technology that brought us realistic-sounding computer voices is now being used to refine Tesla's Autopilot, Skype's new translation function, and Microsoft's Cortana virtual assistant. Okay, that's all good, but where does philosophy fall into this topic? Well, as I mentioned, neural networks are designed to work similarly to the human brain. Except, there's a lot more to the ideas of personhood and consciousness than just having a brain. So now that we know what AI is and a bit about how it works, the real question becomes, at what point is a computer a person? At what point can we determine that such a machine is conscious? And is that even achievable? There are multiple ways to come at this issue, and countless arguments for every belief. I'm going to attempt to address as many of these as possible, but it's not really achievable to cover every single argument. Not for a human, at least. Let's start at the very basis of personhood. What makes a person a person? Merriam-Webster's definition is straightforward, but kind of unhelpful. Human, individual. This is known as the genetic criterion, which means that humans have personhood and nothing else does. However simple and easy this makes the issue of personhood, it also shuts down the possibility of our personhood having artificial being altogether. So let's plow through this dictionary definition and continue on to some other theories. Another solution to the personhood problem is the social criterion, which explains that personhood depends on whether or not society recognizes you as a person, or whether someone cares about you. This is pretty simple too, and doesn't rule out artificial beings altogether. What it does rule out, however, is the personhood of anything that no one cares about. If no one cares about a specific AI, then poof, it isn't a person. And the same thing goes for humans. Also, if someone cares about an inanimate object, like a family keepsake, is that object a person? In some ways, the social criterion causes more confusion than it solves. One more possible definition of a person is a being that has sentience, a being that is able to feel pleasure and pain. This criterion was put forth by Peter Singer, who agrees that a person does not necessarily have to be a human, but anything with sentience. So, what then is sentience? And can AI achieve this? Well, according to the Turing test, anything that seems to perfectly imitate sentience is, in fact, sentient. Siri will tell you that she's happy to help and glad to assist you, even though Siri cannot experience the emotion of happiness. If an android was able to perfectly mimic human behavior, from expressing emotion verbally to perfecting body language, what would be the difference between it and a sentient being? Some might say a soul. This is probably one of the most controversial topics, if not the most controversial topic in all of philosophy. Whether or not the soul exists and how it comes into being is entirely unknown and has been debated for eons. I said before that there's more to personhood than just a brain. So what if it's a soul? There really isn't a great answer to this question other than with another question. Is it possible to say that other humans might not have one? Really, the only way to know for sure is by behavior, and behavior is what the Turing test is all about. Hank Green explains this quite well in the Crash Course video I mentioned at the very beginning by using the example of Harry the android.
Harry is a humanoid robot with lifelike skin. He can play golf and the viola. He gets nervous. He makes love. He has a weakness for expensive gin. Harry, like John Green, gives every impression of being a person. He has intentions and emotions. You consider him to be your friend. So if Harry gets a cut, and then motor oil rather than blood spills out, you would certainly be surprised. But Lycan says this revelation shouldn't cause you to downgrade Harry's cognitive state from person to person-like. If you would argue that Harry's not a person, then what's he missing?
You heard Hank mention Lycan there, and the person he's referring to is William Lycan, who actually agrees with Turing. He thinks that even though a machine might not be truly sentient, it can still have personhood, because for all intents and purposes, it functions as a person. Many people get a very repulsive feeling to any robot trying to act like it has consciousness when it clearly does not. But Turing and Lycan both agree that once an android can pass the Turing test, you won't be able to tell the difference, and frankly, you probably won't care. So the real question of personhood is not whether a computer or a being is sentient, but whether it can fool you into thinking it is. Either way, it's up to you and society as a whole to decide exactly when AI has progressed to the point of personhood, and what it should or shouldn't be able to do. And what about Terminator? Skynet? The fall of mankind under our artificial overlords? Well, the best neural networks today can't even pass the Turing test consistently yet, so I'd say that's a ways off. Either way, thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something from my 10-minute rant. Like I said before, to learn more about this topic, I would sincerely recommend watching the video by Crash Course entitled Artificial Intelligence and Personhood. It's really a great video and it's very informative, and it's where I got a lot of the ideas that I put in this video.